Han Mitakiapi. Hello relatives, my name is Avis Charley and I am Native American. I'm two different tribes. I'm a Spirit Lake Dakota and Diné, which means Navajo. I was born in Los Angeles, grew up in Long Beach, and so currently I am a ledger artist, which means I create drawings on antique ledger paper, and I'm also a figurative painter. I work with oils. And so about the ledger art, it basically began as prison art. My ancestors would paint on animal hide and they would share stories such as courting scenes, hunting scenes, and fighting scenes. But once they were imprisoned and put on reservations, once contact happened, they no longer could go hunting anymore, and they used materials that were available to them, which was discarded pages from accounting ledger books and color pencils and crayons from the general store. And so that period was about from 1860 to 1910, and it was a male-dominated art form. So they would use this material to continue sharing their stories. And so as a contemporary ledger artist, I'm doing the same thing. I'm using antique paper and color pencil. I first became a ledger artist. I used it as a tool to aid in my healing. My mom passed away tragically 24 years ago, and so I used ledger art to help me process and eventually accept, her being gone. And it also made me, it had me research, our tribe's beadwork designs and our history and our family tree. And so when I create ledger art, I feel like she's there with me. I know she's there with me. And so I've been a ledger artist for about 13 years now. And so as I healed, as I was healing and I'm still healing, I started thinking about the women. Can we start over? I'm so sorry. I first became a ledger artist. I used it as a tool to aid in my healing of my mom's death. She passed away tragically 24 years ago, and so I used ledger art to help me process her death, but also it made me feel close and connected to her. And it also had me researching our family tree, our beadwork designs, our culture, and all the historical aspects of it. And when I'm creating ledger art, I feel like she's near me and close to me. And so over the years, I've been a ledger artist for about 13 years, and so over the years as I began my healing journey, I started thinking about the women today, the matriarchs today who inspire me and motivate me and who I look up to. And I was thinking, well, let's start talking about them. And I have a 13-year-old daughter, and then I started thinking about creating art for future generations. And so I transitioned to large figurative oil paintings. And those ones are celebrating who we are today and the different avenues we take to stay connected to our culture. As a Native American, my ancestral homelands are in North Dakota and New Mexico, but yet I grew up here in LA. I was born and raised here. And even though I'm far from my homelands, there's different ways we can take today to stay connected to our culture, whether it's through powwow dancing, art, activism, academia, ceremony, language works. And so I wanted to talk about those in my paintings, and so that's where I'm at now. I was first introduced to self-help graphics in about 2013. I was part of a group exhibition here called What Tribe, and it was curated by Doug Miles from Apache Skateboards. And so I had two more abstract figurative paintings in that show. And then also I saw they had spray paint workshops. And so Vio was leading that, and so I would come Saturday mornings for that because at 13 years old I was a tagger, and that was like my first art community. And that's when I realized that I wanted to be an artist, because I remember spray painting on the wall, and just at 13 years old spray painting, and then just feeling that force. Just that that's the only way I could describe it. It was a force, and so that's when I knew that art is something that I have to do. So for the print, I had an idea of having a central figure, but then also having an array of images around it. And I kept picturing the color blue, like a certain shade of blue, almost like a periwinkle blue, but with a floral print calico material design on it. Because for me that represents change and adapting. Because my ancestors would, they wore animal hide, but once Europeans came and would trade, they would trade wool and cloth for materials, and so our ancestors adapted to this new material. And so that's what that, for me, that's what that represented. And then I wanted to put an RTD bus on there because I remember my mom telling me a story about how she met my dad. She was on an RTD bus because they both relocated here to the LA area from their reservations in New Mexico and North Dakota in the late 60s. And she was on a bus and she saw my dad walking down the street. And so eventually she ran into him again, and so that's how I came to be. And so I'd like to think of the RTD as my creation story, but also paying, homage to my, parents' meeting. And then also I have buffaloes on there, ledger art style. It's very stylized drawings of buffaloes, and that represents life. And because the buffaloes, they gave us, shelter, they gave us food, clothing, tools. And so, our ancestors didn't waste one piece of the buffalo. And so I wanted to, pay respects to the Buffalo Nation for giving us life. And then also the figure, she's smiling, looking back. And then so there's two teepees there, and that represents our ancestors. And almost like her letting them know that, we're okay, we're still here, and, we're thriving, and this is who we are, and this is what we're doing today. And just knowing who we are, where we come from. And then also, what else is on there? There's a Winchell's sign, and that's just like a snippet of memories growing up in Long Beach. And on Sundays, we would go to Winchell's and get a box of donuts. And so for us, we grew up so poor, so that was like such a treat for us. And so I wanted to put that in there. And so overall, it's talking about memories of growing up in Long Beach, memories of home, memories of my mom. And my artwork always goes back, to honoring my mom. And so that's part of it, how it started. When I came into the studio, I had an idea of what I wanted to do with these different imagery. And so working with Dewey and Gabby, it was the greatest experience. They were patient with me, and so I had a mock-up that I worked from, and so I showed it to them, and so we were able to work off that little mock-up that I had. And we switched a few things, and I remember in the beginning it was I had a hard time understanding the positive and negative space, and then the layers, and then lining up the layers, and then the figure in the print, she's wearing a ribbon skirt, and it's a long skirt with horizontal ribbons. And so I didn't realize how important it was to when you're drawing the layers to make sure they line up. And so, but I learned right away, because one time we had the print ready and we were doing that layer and it didn't line up, and so we had to stop and then start all over again. And but other than that, the whole experience in the studio was, has been great. It's been wonderful. We had pretty much had tacos every day, which I could eat every day, and just having the dialogue with the two of them, and I needed that. It was nice, and it was a wonderful experience.